Episode 3 of How to Ace Your Exams. Okay, in this session, what I'm going to be focusing on is note-taking. There are 10 weeks until you have your final exams. Yes, I hope that scares you. I hope that frightens you. And for those of you who didn't do any work over half term, haha. Now is where the proverbial poo-poo will hit the fan. So we have 10 weeks until we go to our final exams for GCSEs and A-levels. And what I want to focus on this session, now that you're probably back from half term, back into school, is the importance of taking really good notes. So one of the things I spoke about in a previous video was about making sure that you mind the gap between where you are with the knowledge that you have and the knowledge that you need for your final exams. And one of the pointers that I gave is making sure that you knew what was on the syllabus. So hands up, how many of you have gone and have a look at the syllabus for every single one of your subjects? Keep your hands up if you had a conversation with your teacher about the gaps that might be missing. Keep your hands up if you're lying. Okay, so what I want to do is get you to start thinking about what those key subject areas are. If you go and have a look at your notes that you've taken all the way through year 10 up until year 11, there will be a specific amount of notes per subject. What I want you to do is identify those specific areas you don't have complete notes on. So, for example, you might be doing something like English and you might be doing a specific bit of poetry or a specific text. Have you got all the notes that you need specifically on them? Or you may be doing maths and you may have some notes that aren't quite up to date on algebra or probabilities. Or it might be one of your languages, you might not necessarily know about the verbs or tenses. Go and have a look over your current notes that you have and go and look and identify the gaps that are missing. Now my challenge is to you is that come the end of February, which is effectively over the next 7 days, that you have all your notes up to date. Because what you want to do is to be spending March and April really just going over the notes that you have and revising the techniques for your exams as opposed to creating new notes. There's no point trying to shove new information down into your head. Go back and make sure that the notes that you have on every single subject that you have identified in the syllabus are complete, and do that and make sure they're up to date by the end of February. The second thing I want to talk to you about on note-taking is your note-taking techniques, because it's great to talk to you about the fact that you need to get all those notes up to date and you have to be able to revise from a good set of notes. But how best do you take notes? So say, for example, right about now, you probably have all the notes that you've either got from your textbook or from lectures and lessons that you've got from your teachers. Now, one of the ways to kind of solidify those notes and obviously take you going forward into a revision is to see how best you can summarize them. Now, you may have a lot of really detailed notes, but that's not necessarily going to help you because that's just a load of information. You'll suffer with overwhelm. You get really stressed. You'll start drinking vodka and start smoking and doing weird things and listening to weird music. That's not right. What you want to do is you want to consolidate that stuff down. So here are some tools that I reckon that will be really helpful for you. The first one I think is to get into the habit of doing mind maps, or association maps as people will call them. So where you've got your core subject in the middle and then you've got your notes going, lines coming out of them, almost like a map spreading out, almost like an octopus. Now what you want to do is you want to primarily take them from the notes you already have as opposed to going back to specific textbooks. Or if you want to, one of the things I found that's really helpful is go to the back of any specific chapter that you've been reading in your notebooks or your textbooks and go and have a look at the back of the chapter, and what it will probably do is it will give you a summary of the things that you need to know. Use that summary as the basis for your mind map and then work your way backwards. The second kind of note taking I think would be really good for you is to do it in levels. So say, for example, if you have a heading, which is the main theme of your subject, and then you have a subheading, which is kind of like more like the details that you want to get into, and then subheadings under there. That's a great way of being able to split your notes up. So level 1, then level 2, then level 3. What is that main theme you're talking about? So it could be, I don't know, for example, it could be photosynthesis, and then what's the subheading? So it could be like plants, and it could be about the respiratory system. And then number 3, the third heading down, is in more details. How do you go through that process? What are the key words or the key terms that you need to have in place in order to be able to make that work? Another point I wanted to make out is for students who are dyslexic. So if there are any students who are dyslexic who are listening to me at this point in time, here are some things that I think are really helpful when you're doing your notes. There are 2 things. Number 1, why not do some of your notes as audio? So as a way of being able to record stuff, put it, you record it with your voice, because that's a great way of being able to learn some themes. And then the second thing I think is really good is thinking about how you write those notes down. Don't write it on white paper. I know, and I've spoken to thousands, well, thousands, I say hundreds and thousands of people who have worked with dyslexic students over the years. And one of the things I found is really important is that if you write not on a white piece of paper, but slightly off white or maybe yellow, and when you write in more with bolder pen, or sometimes when students are revising using PowerPoint, they will use a blue background with white text, whichever one works for you. But think about that way or those ways, using the audio and using a slightly off-white color paper to be able to record your notes on. The other thing I think is really good is to be able to get a little notebook that you can keep all your formulas in. So say, for example, if you're doing maths or any one of the sciences, or if you need formulas or systems for any other subject that you're working on, even if it's like things like tenses in your languages, get a notebook, a really little small notebook that you can put in your pocket, and keep that as your formula book that you can always go back and refer to. Whether it's something like, I don't know, in French, when we have the phrases that you use. So je is I, tu is tu, il is they, nous, sommes, vous, et, etc. You can use that and you can put that down in your notebook and keep it as a great resource that you can actually look back to, a way of being able to check what notes you have. The last one that I know a lot of people use is they use things like flow diagrams. So when you're using, specifically when you're doing things like sciences or similar subjects, you can have a flow diagram. So what are you starting with? What's the point you're starting with? And how do you make your way to that final end? So whatever note technique that you prefer to use, work on that. You'll try and test it. You'll know which one will stay in your mind most. But there are a number of ones that you can actually choose from. And the last one that I always get asked about in terms of doing notes, Dave, is about highlighting. And I'm not a big fan of highlighting, but I think it can work. Here's where I think it can work. If you're going to go and study a subject, whether you're using a textbook or your actual notebook, I think it's really good to highlight probably the theme and maybe the top heading and maybe some key terms. But there's no point in highlighting going all the way through your page, because all you've just done is you've made a really pretty, colourful page and you're not going to remember everything there. So only highlight those key things that you really need. So it could be the subject, it could be a key verb in a language that you may have a bit of a problem struggling with, or it might be a key term in science or any one of those other, social sciences, any one of those heavy subjects that you need to remember those terms. Just go and highlight those little ones, but don't highlight a whole massive swathe and paragraphs and text, because there's no point. You just won't remember. Okay, and it's been proven by people who have passed exams left, right, and centre that trying to remember by just doing loads of highlighting doesn't help. So I hope those key tips for note taking, or how to take those notes, will really help. Okay, and point 3, it's about organising notes. One of the key things is it's great to take the notes, whether you're doing it as audio, whether you're doing the mind maps and drawing pictures around the house, posting up post-it notes and sticking them all over the place, but it's really good to be able to organize your notes. So I think it'd be really good, while you're trying to summarize all that stuff, to think about color coding them. So for example, my daughter, she has her languages are in brighter colors. She has some of her sciences done in a different color. She'll have her maths and English notes done in a different color. That way, it's just a way of being able to remember them. It's just a way of you being able to signify with that, or recognize those specific colors, as a way of your brain being able to say, okay, that's quite significant for me. I'll remember it that way. And I think, as well as being able to have those colors, it's great to have a way of indexing. So if you have a folder and you've got key things that you want to go through your syllabus, try and get those tabs, those lovely tabs that you can get from a stationery shop. Or if your schools have got stationery, I'm sure there's a way of being able to have a nice negotiating conversation with your school about being able to do those. Have those in your folder. Or if your notes are in a notebook, I reckon you should get those post-it notes. There's those little post-it notes they're really small, and they're like indexes, and you can get them, and one side is sticky and the other bit has got a bit of color on them. I think it'd be really good to be able to get them. You can get them from any store, Staples, Ryman's, whatever the stationery stores is, and put those in your book if you're using your book as opposed to a folder as your ways and means of recording information. Also, if you're using a computer, because some people obviously do revise from their laptop, their tablets, or directly from their desktop, I think one of the great things to do is try and get either software that will help you to organize your stuff in a really good way. So for example, you may have subfolders for your subjects, or you may want specific software itself that will help you to identify where each single subject is. So one of the things I recommend is Google Drive. Google Drive is a great way for you to be able to store your documents. Why is it really good? Because you can access it at home on your desktop, or when you're out, if you've synchronized it so that you can get files offline, you can do it on your laptop, or you can even do it on your phone. And it's a great way of being able to just pick up some stuff that's really, really good like that. Another one that I recommend, and I'm a big, huge fan of this piece of software because it helps me to organize stuff, is this thing called Evernote. And you'll see I'll put the link under here, Evernote. Evernote's a great way because not only can you organize them in folders, but you can do tabs as well, and you can do specific tags as ways and means of remembering that stuff that you are studying. So that's a lot of information about note taking. Obviously, the first thing I said is make sure that you identify where those gaps are, and bring all your notes up to date so when you can start revising. Secondly, think about what technique you want to use when you are taking your notes, which one works for you, because for everybody it's going to be slightly different. And then the third one, how do you organize those notes so that when you start getting into the habit of revising, what are the things that, or how is your information all set out quite clearly so that it makes it a lot easier for you to remember them. I hope this has helped. Please feel free to subscribe down below or like the video and share, whether in your school or with other students or with your parents who might want to be able to help you with your studies. Thank you for listening, and if you have missed any one of the previous videos, please feel free to have a look online because they're definitely there as well, and I hope it really helps you. So to your success, peace.